Hi everyone, this is Raja and welcome back to this video. So in this video, we're gonna learn how to build a simple, cool Android game start to finish within a very short time. So before we get started, let's take a look at what you're gonna be building at the end of this video. So as you can see here, we have the device simulator opened. So I'm gonna click on play. And as you can see, this is the game. This is the block dodge game. I can simply click on tap to start and automatically the player is here. I can tap on the left to move left, I can tap on the right to move to right, I can dodge the blocks, and if I collide with the blocks, automatically the game gets restarted. I can tap again and move it like this, and as you can see here we have the score which gets updated, and this way the game keeps running. So this is a very simple game, but it looks really cool, and just by building this simple game you will learn how to build a complete game start to finish step by step. And the explanations will be less because we're gonna go really fast. So I hope you're really excited. So let's get started building this block dodge game. So as you can see, I have Unity opened. I'm gonna go ahead and click on new project. Then from the top, I'm gonna select the latest version of the Unity that I'm gonna use. Then I'm gonna select 2D because this is a 2D project. Then here I'm gonna choose the location where I'm gonna save my project. And here I'm gonna give a name. So let's say give a name to 2D Android project or 2D Android game, anything that you want. Here we're going to select the location. Alright, so I have changed the location. Then I'm going to click on create project and our project will be created, and I'm going to wait for it to load. So as you can see, our project has been loaded. Now we're going to build this project for Android. So make sure you have Android build tools installed in your computer. So if you go to Unity Hub, go to installs and select the version, click on the gear icon, click on add modules, and make sure you have this Android build support installed. Otherwise you will not be able to build for Android. So once that's done, simply close this. And now here we have our new project opened. Now, if you don't see this kind of outline, then what you can do is you can go to this layout and simply choose this 2x3 layout, and then you can see something like this. All right. So with that done, now I'm going to go to this file, build settings. And here, as you can see, Windows, Mac and Linux selected. I'm going to select Android and simply click on switch platform to switch our current platform to Android. Alright, so as you can see, currently the Unity logo is beside Android. That means our current platform is Android. And then you can simply close this one. And at the top, you can also see Android written. That means our current platform is set to Android. Alright, so now I'm going to go to this game tab. And from here, as you can see, pre-aspect is written. From there, I'm going to come here and simply choose 16:9 portrait. So this is the mobile resolution that we are targeting. If you want, you can also use other resolutions. If you want, you can also choose 1080 by 1920. But here I'm simply using an aspect ratio. Alright, so now, as you can see here, we have our project tab. Inside that, inside the assets folder, we have scenes. Inside this, we have our default scene. I'm going to right click and rename this scene to game, G-A-M-E. All right. So with that done, now I'm going to go ahead and create a few folders here where I'm going to import some of our assets. So first of all, I'm going to create a new folder. I'm going to name this one sprites. Create another folder. I'm going to name this one scripts. Okay. And create another folder, and I'm going to name this one prefab. Okay, so this will be enough for now. So I'm going to select the sprites folder and go inside it. Here we're going to import 2D sprites that we're going to use for our game. So here, as you can see, some of the sprites that you're going to use in our game. So I'm going to select all the sprites one by one and drag and drop them inside the sprites folder. Okay, so these are the sprites that you're going to use in our game. I have downloaded them for free from kenny.nl, gameart2d.com, and I have created this one by myself. So if you want, you can go ahead and download them from anywhere from the internet. So with that done, now we're going to go ahead and drag and drop our first asset into the scene. So first of all, I'm going to go ahead and drag and drop this tile. This is ground tile into the scene. I'm going to drag and drop this one. And as you can see here, we have the ground tile. I can simply move the ground tile to the bottom. If you want, you can select this move tool and move it to the bottom. Make sure it is at the center. So 0 for the X. And move it a little bit to the bottom like this. As you can see, this is the game view, so you need to make sure that you can see only some part and some part is outside of the screen. Now I'm going to select this sprite. I'm going to rename this one to ground. Okay. Now from the sprite renderer, I'm going to go ahead and select the draw mode from simple to tiled. So the draw mode is now tiled. Now I'm going to select this rect tool and simply drag it at this side and drag it at this side. Okay, so now as you can see, we have selected the tiled mode, and that is why the ground was tiled like this. So now our ground is ready. So with that done, now I'm going to go ahead and drag and drop our player into the scene. So here, as you can see, this pig, this is what I'm going to use as my player. So I'm going to drag and drop it in our scene. It is pretty big. So I'm going to click here, press the shift key and simply drag it to make it smaller like this. I think something like this should be okay. Even if you want, you can make it even smaller. I think something like this should look good. Okay. So simply go ahead and position it somewhere like this. Now, as you can see, the pig is behind the ground. In order to solve this, you can select the pig, go to the already layer from the sprite renderer and set it to 1. So now, as you can see, this the pig is at the front. So I'm going to put it somewhere like this. Now I'm going to make the X position to 0 and this is our pig. So I'm going to go ahead and rename this one to player. So player, and that is our player. All right, so with that done, now I'm going to go ahead and set this pig up. So I'm going to go ahead and click on add component, physics 2D, and I'm going to add a rigid body 2D to it. So here we have a rigid body 2D and I have added it. So now it will be able to interact with the physics engine of Unity. Now I'm going to go ahead and set the gravity scale to 0, angular drag to 0, so that it doesn't fall down automatically. Then I'm going to go to this constraints and change the freeze rotation to Z, and you can also freeze position on Y as well. Okay, so with that done, now our player is almost ready. I'm going to go ahead and add a physics 2D box collider component because we want it to collide with other game objects. So here we have a box collider, and if you zoom in, as you can see here, we have the green line, which is the box collider. So what you can do is you can simply click on this edit collider button and you can simply drag these handles a little bit to the inside to make it smaller because we don't want it to be so big. So something like this should look okay for our player. So now our player is almost ready. So here we have our player and it is almost ready. Now I'm going to select the main camera, go to the background and set the color to something like a sunny sky color. If you want, you can also set it to yellow, green, black, whatever you prefer, but I think I'm going to set it to some sky color because I like this. It feels like the game is happening in a way sunny weather. So with that done, our player, our ground, and our background is ready. Now we need to set up our obstacles. For that, here we have something called crate. So we're going to drag and drop this crate object here, and this is going to be our obstacle. So if you want, you can also make it a little bit bigger. I think I'm going to press the shift key and make it a little bit bigger, something like this. So now I'm gonna go ahead and rename this one to, let's say, block. Okay, and then I'm gonna go to add component, physics 2D, and I'm gonna add a rigid body 2D to it, rigid body 2D. Then I'm gonna go to add component, physics 2D, and I'm gonna add a box collider 2D to it. So box collider 2D. So same way we have added a rigid body 2D and also a box collider 2D. So with that done, now we're going to select our block, go to this tag, click on add tag, and from here I'm going to click on plus to create a new tag, and I'm going to give it a name of block. Okay, now I'm going to select the block, go here and choose block. So now our block has a rigid body 2D, a box collider 2D, and also a block tag attached. So our player or our block is ready. If you want, you can simply move it upwards and then click on play, and you will see it will slowly fall down. So click on play, 3, 2, 1, as you can see, it automatically falls down because of the gravity. And if you move it to the left, it automatically falls down below because then it will not collide with the player. Okay, so our block is ready and our player is ready. So now what we're gonna do is, I'm gonna go to this scripts folder and create few scripts that we're gonna use in this case. So I'm gonna right click, create a new C# script, and I'm gonna create a script named player. Okay, then I'm gonna create another C# script. I'm gonna name this one game manager, just like this. Then I'm gonna create another C# script, and I'm gonna name this one block. Okay, so here we have our block script, game manager script, and our player script as well. So now I'm gonna select the block, and in our block, we're gonna simply drag and drop our block script. Okay, if you want, you can also go to this add component, scripts, and from here attach the block script. So any way you prefer. So here we have a block script attached. So let's go and double click to open it in Visual Studio and write our first code. So double click to open it. Alright, so now as you can see, our block script has opened up in Visual Studio. So now we're gonna write our very first code. So here, this is a simple code that we need to write. We don't need this start function, so we're gonna go ahead and delete this one. So inside the update, what you're gonna do is we're gonna check if the block is outside of the screen, then we're gonna delete it. That's all we need to do in this code. So we're gonna say if transform.position y is less than -6f, so it is below our camera level, then we're gonna simply go ahead and destroy game object. Okay, so whenever our position goes outside of the screen and below the screen, then we're gonna simply destroy the box. Otherwise there will be so many blocks cluttered into the screen and they will never get destroyed. So now that we have written it, I'm gonna save it, go back to Unity. And now that we have the script attached to the block, you will see whenever I click, the block will fall down, go outside, and as you can see, automatically it got destroyed. So now whenever I click, the block will automatically get destroyed. Alright, so now our block is ready. Now what you're gonna do is we're gonna go ahead and make it a prefab. A prefab is a game object which we can reuse again and again. And here we're gonna use this box as our obstacle again and again, and that is why we need to set it as a prefab. So we're gonna go to the prefab folder and drag and drop our block right here. Now as you can see, the block becomes blue. That means it is now a prefab. So I'm going to disable this from the scene because we don't need it in the scene anymore because we already have it in the prefab. Alright, so now with that done, now we need to write the code to make our player move. So let's go and start writing that. So I'm going to go to the player, and from here I'm going to go to add component, scripts, and I'm going to add the player script to the player. Now I'm going to double click to open the player script up and start editing it. So here as you can see, we have the player script opened. So let's go and start coding. So first of all, we will need few variables here. So for that, here I'm going to go and write public float move speed. So this will decide how much faster the player will move. Then we'll need a reference to the rigid body 2D that we have attached to our player. So we're going to create a variable called rigid body 2D RB. So this will give us a reference to the rigid body that we have attached to the player, and it will help us to move the player left and right. Now you can also create an awake function, but here you can simply go and inside the start function write RB equals get component rigid body 2D. So now we will have access to the rigid body 2D component that is attached to the player inside this RB variable. So just by using this RB variable, we can move the player, do all the physics functions, and perform all the physics operations on the player. Okay, so with that done, now what we're going to do is we're going to come inside the update function. Inside the update function, we're going to check if our player is tapping on the left side of the screen, then we're going to move the player left. And if it is tapping on the right side of the screen, then we're going to move the player to the right. In order to check that, first of all, we're going to write if input dot get mouse button down, not button down, but mouse button 0. So this function gets called again and again whenever we are pressing on the screen with mouse or tapping on our screen with a touch finger in an Android device. So whenever you are continuously pressing on the screen, this function automatically gets called. And whenever this function gets called, this if condition will become true, and then we will move our player. Now else, that is whenever we lift our finger, we are not going to move our player and set its velocity to 0. Okay, so whenever we press the button, we're going to move our player, and whenever we are not pressing the button, we're going to set the velocity to 0. So here we're going to say else rv.velocity equals 0. So whenever we are not tapping on the screen or touching on the screen, we're going to simply make the velocity variable of our rv to 0. Not 0, we're going to write vector2.0. So whenever we are not pressing our fingers, our velocity will be 0. And whenever we are pressing our finger, first of all, we need to check at which point we are pressing our finger or at which point we are clicking our mouse. In this case, we are simply checking at which point we are pressing our finger. For that, we can create a new variable, vector3 touch pose. And inside that, we're going to write input.mouse position. So this mouse position variable will give us the position where our mouse is currently or where our touch finger is currently whenever we are pressing on the screen. Okay, now what we need to do is we need to convert this mouse position from screen point to world point. And whenever we convert it to the world point, automatically our center becomes 0, the left becomes negative, and the right becomes positive. So it becomes very, very easy to handle the touch inputs and control the player. So that is why we need to convert this one from screen point to world point. To do that, here we're going to simply write camera dot main dot screen to world point, and inside this function we're going to simply put our input dot mouse position. Okay, so simply say we are getting the mouse position which is in screen points, then we are converting it to the world points so that the center becomes 0, the left becomes negative, and the right becomes positive, and then we are putting it inside this touch pose variable. So now inside the touch pose variable we have the position where we are touching on the screen. Okay, so now we need to check if touch pose dot x is less than 0. That means if we are pressing on the left half of the screen, or else if we are pressing on the right half of the screen. So whether we are pressing on the left half of the screen or we are pressing on the right half of the screen. So if we are pressing on the left half of the screen, then we need to move our player to the left. For that we're going to write rb.addForce vector2.left multiplied by move speed. So whenever we are pressing on the left side of the screen, we're going to add force to the left, and whenever we are pressing the right side of the screen, we're going to say rb.addForce, and we're going to write vector2.right, or you can also write vector2.left negative. Okay, so in this case we're going to write vector2.right, and we're going to multiply it with move speed. Okay, so whenever we are pressing on the right side of the screen, we are adding a force at the right side with this move speed value, and whenever we are pressing on the left of the screen, we're adding a force at the left side so that our player moves to the left. And whenever we are not pressing on the screen, we're simply making the velocity to 0. So just by writing this simple code, now we will be able to move our player by touching left and right of our screen. So let's go and save this code and go back to Unity. Alright, so as you can see, here we have our player, and here we have our player script, and now we have this move speed variable. For now, let's go ahead and make the value 5. If you want, you can also give it some other values. And now if I go ahead and make it a little bit bigger, click on play. Now you will see whenever I press the left half, the player slowly moves to the left. Whenever I press to the right, the player slowly moves to the right. And if I simply leave my mouse, the player automatically becomes 0, or the velocity becomes 0. So this way I can simply go ahead and make the player move left and right just like this and control the player. If you want, you can also change the value to a little bit higher values, let's say 10. And then you can click on play, and now as you can see, it moves a little bit faster. So according to your game, whatever you prefer, you can set the value to that, and then it will be good to go. But another thing, you can see that whenever we are pressing left, the player can move beyond our boundaries. So this is not something that we want. So that is why we're going to create some bounds to stop the player from moving to the left and right outside of our screen. So now let's create some boundaries to stop the player from moving outside of the screen. So as you can see, here we have our game view, not our game view, our scene view. So here I'm going to go ahead and click on create empty, and I'm going to simply leave it like this. So this is our empty game object. I'm going to go ahead and reset its position. Then I'm going to select the move tool, move it to the bottom somewhere like this. Then I'm going to move it to the left somewhere like this, so that it is on the edge of the left side of the screen. Now I'm going to go to add component, physics 2D, and I'm going to add a box collider 2D component. So now as you can see, here we have a box collider 2D in green. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to simply go to this edit collider button, and from here I can manually make it smaller, or I can make the X size smaller from X to 0.5. As you can see, now it is thin, and I can also make the Y a little bit higher, something like this. And then I'm going to position this game object a little bit on this side, somewhere like this, at the edge of the screen. So this is the position, and here we will have this collider which will act like a wall so that our player can never move beyond this. So now I'm going to go ahead and duplicate this one, and this time I'm going to select this game object, and from the X position I'm going to simply remove the negative so that it automatically moves to the right. So this game object is at the left, and this game object is at the extreme right. So both of them will act as the boundaries of our game. So now I'm going to click and create a new empty game object. I'm going to name this one walls, or you can also name it boundaries. Now I'm going to select both of these game objects, and I'm going to drag and drop them inside the wall. Okay, so now both of them have become the child of this wall. So this is the wall game object, and both of them have now become the child of this wall. Okay, just for organization purpose. So now that we have created the walls, let's see if our player can move beyond this one. So now I'm going to go ahead and click on play, And now as you can see, whenever I click, the player cannot move beyond this because we have the boundary. If you select these walls, as you can see here we have the walls, and whenever the player moves here, it cannot move beyond the boundaries. Okay, so our wall is working and our player cannot move beyond this. So with that done, now our player functionality is almost ready. So now we need to write some code so that the player can check whenever it collides with the block, and then we can restart the game. Okay, so let's go and open up the player script. And here, outside of all these things, what you're going to do is, outside of the update function, this is the update function, so make sure it is. And here, outside the update function, here we're going to create the void on collision enter 2D function. So this on collision enter 2D function gets called automatically whenever our player or this game object gets collided with any other game object. So whenever it gets collided with any other game object, we're going to check if collision.gameObject.tag equals block. So whenever it collides with any game object, we're going to check if that game object is tagged block. That means we have collided with the block. Then what you're going to do is we're going to simply reload the scene so that we can restart the game because the game is now over. And in order to reload the scene, here we need to first of all import some new things. So you're going to write using Unity engine dot scene management. So this will help us to manage the scenes and reload the scenes. So with that done, now here we're going to write scene manager dot load scene, and inside that we're going to simply write game within quotations, or you can simply write 0 as well. So because we have only one scene currently in our build, so that is why the 0th scene or the first scene will load automatically. Or you can also simply go ahead and within quotations write game, which is the current name of our scene. So whenever our block collides with the player, it will automatically reload the scene and our game will get reset. Okay, so let's see if that is working. So let's go and save this and go back to Unity. Alright, so now let's go ahead and test it. So as you can see here with the block prefab, I'm going to go ahead and activate it for now just for testing. I'm going to position it over our player. Now I'm going to click to play and automatically the block falls down. And as you can see, as soon as the block falls down, automatically the game gets restarted. So whenever the block falls down, let me try it one more time. Whenever the block falls down, automatically the game gets restarted. So every time the block falls down, the game gets restarted. So our code is working. Okay, and you can see that whenever the block falls down outside, you will see the block falls down and automatically gets destroyed, but it doesn't restart the scene. So our restarting code is pretty much working and our player code is almost finished. So now what we need to do is we need to write a game manager code so that we can play the game again and again. We can start the game whenever we tap for the first time, and we can also keep the score. So let's do those things. So now let's go and disable the block because we don't need it right now. So here I'm going to create another new empty game object and I'm going to name this one game manager. Game manager, just like this. And then I'm going to create another new game object empty and I'm going to name this one our spawn point. So this is the point from where our blocks will keep spawning. So I'm going to select the spawn point and reset its position. Now I'm going to move the spawn point over somewhere like this outside of our camera view so that it can spawn blocks right from here. Now what we're going to do is we're going to create random spawn points from here. We're going to create random spawn points over the x-axis like here, 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 and randomly spawn blocks from here, 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 so that our player can dodge blocks from anywhere. Okay, so whenever we're gonna reference this spawn point, we don't need to change its y or z position. We only need to create a random x position on this line, and then we can spawn the block from there and the block will fall down over the player. Okay, so let's see how we can do that. So I'm going to select my spawn point, make its x position to 0. Then I'm going to select the game manager, drag and drop the game manager script over it, then double click to open up our game manager. Okay, so here we have our game manager. So let's go and first of all we need some variables that we gonna use here. So first of all we're gonna create a public game object block variable. So this block variable will hold the reference to our block so that we can spawn the block and instantiate the block. Then we need a public float max x variable. This variable will decide the limit up to which point we can spawn the block on the x-axis, okay, on the left and right. Then we need a reference to public transform spawn point. So this will hold the reference of the spawn point so that we can actually understand at which position we need to spawn the game object. Then we need another function, public float, not function, a variable, public float spawn rate. So this spawn rate will decide how fast we want to spawn the blocks. Let's say we spawn the first block, then after 1 second we spawn the second block. So that's what will be decided using this spawn rate. Okay, so with that done, now I think most of the things are ready. So now what we need to do is, here we need to create another new variable. Let's say we're gonna name this one bool game started. So this will decide if our game has started or not, and by default it will be false, and we can also manually set it to false. And in this case I think we don't need the start function, so I'm gonna go ahead and delete this one. So in the update, we first of all don't need much things, so later on we'll need something. So first of all, what you're gonna do is, here we're gonna create a new function. We're gonna name this one void spawn block. So this function will be useful to spawn the blocks. Okay, so first of all, what you're gonna do is, here first of all we need a position where we can spawn the blocks. So for that we're gonna write vector3 spawn pose equals spawn point dot position. And if you remember, what is this spawn point? This spawn point is the spawn point transform, and here we will add the reference to the spawn point which we have created in the editor, the spawn point variable, okay, or the spawn point object. So here we have got the position of that spawn point. Now we need to create random x positions over that spawn point's x-axis so that we can spawn randomly blocks on the different positions, and it will look that random blocks are spawning at random positions. So for that we're going to write spawn point dot x. So we only need to modify the x position of the spawn point as we have discussed already. And here we're going to write random dot range. So we're going to create a random value between minus max x and positive max x. So within negative max x and positive max x, we're going to create a random value, and then we're going to put the random value inside this spawn point dot x variable. Okay, so if we do that, what will happen is, not spawn point, actually I have made a mistake, spawn pose dot x. So now we are creating a random x position over this spawn position, and then we need to instantiate our block at this random spawn position. To do that, we're going to write instantiate. Within that, we're going to write, first of all, what are you going to instantiate? We're going to instantiate the block. Then at which position? Of course, the spawn position that we have created, the spawn pose. And then we need to write the rotation, which will be the default rotation, that is quaternion.identity. So because we don't need any external rotations in this case. So this way, whenever this is not start, I think I have made some mistake. This will be spawn block. Okay, so inside the spawn block, what we are doing is, we are creating a random spawn position. Then we are creating its random x position using this minus max x and positive max x. Then we are instantiating the block at the random spawn position so that our block gets spawned from random positions. Okay, so with that done, now our things are almost ready. Now what we need to do is, here we need to repeatedly call this spawn block function, because this spawn block function will spawn the block only once, but we need to call it repeatedly again and again so that it gets called again and again. For that, here we're going to create another function. We're going to call it void start spawning. This is the name of the function. And here what we're going to do is, we're going to write invoke repeating. So this invoke repeating function can call any function again and again after a certain rate. So first of all, we need to write which function we need to call. So within quotations, we're going to write spawn block exactly as it is written here. So it is best if you can go ahead and copy this from here and paste it right here, because if you don't write it exactly like this, then it will not work. So spawn block, then we need to write after how much time this will start calling the spawn block function. So for that, we're going to write 0.5f, because after just half seconds we want to call. Then we need to write how many times or after how much second it will get called again and again and again and again. For that, we're going to use the spawn rate variable that we have already created. So let's say the spawn rate value is 1. That means, first of all, it will get called after 0.5 seconds. Then after 1 second it will get called again, after 1 second it will get called again, after 1 second it will get called again. So after every 1 second it will get called again and again, and our blocks will be spawned one by one at random positions whenever this start spawning function is called. Alright, so now all we need to do is we need to call this start spawning function whenever the game starts. And let's see how we can do that. So for that, inside our update, what we're going to do is we're going to say if input.get mouse button down 0. So that means whenever we tap on the screen or click on the screen for the very first time, then we want to start the game. Okay, so whenever we are tapping on the screen and the game has not started, so that means if not game started, so that means the game started is false. As you can see in the beginning, the game started is set to false. So in the beginning the game started is false. So that is why whenever we tap on the screen for the first time, we want to start spawning, and then the game will be started. So the game started will be true, and then it will be not called again. And if you don't give these conditions, then what will happen is every time you click on the screen, automatically this start spawning function will get called. But we want to call it only once at the beginning of the game. So that is why we need to write if we are tapping on the screen and the game has not started yet, then we want to spawn this. Okay, so whenever this happens, what you can do is we're gonna call this start spawning function. So we're gonna write start spawning, and this function will get called, and then we need to simply write game started equals true. So now whenever we tap on the screen for the first time, the start spawning will be called and the game started will become true. Okay, so this code should work and these things are already set up. So let's go and save this code, go back to Unity, add the references and see how this one is working. So let's go and save this, go back to Unity. Alright, so now as you can see here we have the game manager and it is asking for some references. So first of all we need to give a reference to the spawn point, and as you can see here we have already created a spawn point. So I'm going to drag and drop the spawn point right here. Next it is asking for the spawn rate. So let's say for now give the spawn rate to 1. That means after every 1 second a new block will be spawned. Next we need to give a reference to the block game object, as you can see here. So for that we're going to go to the prefab folder and drag and drop the block right here, and make sure you drag and drop it from the prefab and not from the scene, because from the scene if you drag and drop it, it will get destroyed and then it will not work again. So only drop it from the prefab so that we can reuse it again and again. Next we need to give a max exposition, which will be the maximum point up to which we can spawn the block. So for that, let's say I select the block and I can simply go ahead and enable it for now, and as you can see whenever I move to the left, let's say this will be the extreme left position, and as you can see current position is minus 2.24. so let's say I can spawn it up to 2.25. okay, so that will be the minus maximum position and the positive maximum position will be 2.25. so now we're going to disable it. So I'm going to go to the game manager and set the max x to 2.25. So this will be the maximum position up to which our blocks can be spawned. So with that done, now I'm going to go ahead and save this and let's see if our code is working. So let's go. Are you ready? 3, 2, 1, click. And now as you can see, our blocks start spawning at random positions and they get destroyed automatically. And whenever I collide with the player, as you can see, the scene gets restarted. So every time it collides with the player, the scene gets restarted, but it will start working only when I click on the screen for the very first time. So as you can see, currently no blocks are spawning, but if I tap, it start and the blocks start falling and the game starts. And now as you can see, the blocks are falling, I can collide and the game gets restarted. So the main mechanism of the game is actually working pretty fine. So now what we need to do is we need to add some scores to make it some interesting, and we need to add some UI so that we can start tapping and we can create the menu. So let's do that now. So what you can do is, as you can see here inside the sprites folder, I have this tap to start. I can go ahead and drag and drop it right here. If you want, you can also use any other things that you want, but in this case I have created this tap to start function, tap to start image by myself, so I'm using it. And as you can see, it is giving it some error. So what you can do is you can select it from the import settings, select the sprite mode to single and click on apply. And once you've done that, simply drag and drop it once again and now it will work. So I'm going to delete the previous one and now I'm going to use this one. So this will be our tap to start text. If you want, you can also make it a little bit smaller or bigger. So this text will be here in the beginning and later on it will go away. Okay, so this is our tap to start text. Now what I'm going to do is I'm here going to create a UI and I'm going to create this UI text mesh pro text. So you can click import TMP essentials. So as you can see, the TMP has been imported. So now as you can see here, we have our canvas, and along with it, we also have this text mesh pro text. So I'm going to go ahead and rename this one to score text. So score text. And as you can see, currently you probably cannot see it in the screen. So select this score text, go to this rect transform and reset its position. Now as you can see, it is at the center. So first of all, what you need to do is we need to select the canvas, go to the UI scale mode and select scale with screen size. Give the reference resolution to 1080 by 1920 or any other resolution. Set the match to 0.5 so that our UI gets scaled automatically to different screen sizes. Okay, so with that done, now as you can see, if you double click on the score text, you will be directed to the score text on the canvas. So make sure to double click it. Now as you can see here, we have our score text. Now we can select the rect tool and drag it to make it bigger, something like this on this side, and also drag it to make it bigger on the upper side as well. So with that done, now as you can see here, we have our score text. I can simply go ahead and move it to the top. Now I can go ahead and set it to 0, set this text to 0, because this will be our score and it will be 0. Now I'm going to go ahead and change the font size to much higher value. As you can see, currently it's 30. I'm going to make it about 100, or let's say 300. I think 300 should be good for this point. Okay, 300. Now we need to put it to the center. For that, from the alignment, I'm going to select center from here and center vertically as well. So now our text is at the center, and automatically whenever the score gets incremented, we want to set it to 1, 2, 300, 1000 and all these things. So in the beginning it will be 0, just like this. Now I'm going to select the vertex color and change the alpha value to a little bit down, so just to make it look a little bit cooler. If you want, you can also keep it to 0, and you can also change the color if you want to. I think I'm going to make the alpha value something like this because this looks good and I like this. Okay, so with that done, our score text is ready. So now all we need to do is we need to actually write code so that our score gets incremented and automatically it gets updated on the score text on the screen. So to do that, I'm going to select the game manager and let's go and open up the game manager script. So inside the game manager script, we need some more references right here. So first of all, here we're going to create a new reference. We're going to call it public game object, and you're going to call it tap text. So this will store the reference to the tap text, and we need to disable it whenever the game starts. Then we're going to say text mesh pro public text mesh pro UGUI, and for that we can create a variable called score text. Now whenever I wrote this text mesh pro UGUI, as you can see, automatically it imported the text mesh pro. In your case, if your editor didn't import it, you need to write using TM Pro at the top, otherwise it will not work. So make sure to write using TM Pro. Then public text mesh pro UGUI score text. So this score text variable will store the reference to the score text that you have created. Now here we need to create another public variable, not public variable, we need to simply write int score equals 0. So this will be our score variable. Now we need to find a mechanism so that the score gets incremented automatically. To do that, what you can do is every time we spawn a new block, we can automatically increment the score value. For that, here we can write, whenever we are spawning a block, we can write score plus plus. So this will simply increment the score value. Next, we also need to update the score value on the UI element. For that, we can write score text dot text equals score dot toString. So here what we're doing is, this score variable is an integer. We are converting it to a string, otherwise it's not going to work. Then we are setting our UI text value. We are setting the text value of our UI element that we have created on the screen to this score value. So whenever it will be 1, it will become 1. It will be 2, it will become 2, and automatically our score will change on the screen. So most of the things are almost ready. Another thing we need to do is, as you can see here, we have this tap text inside this game object. So whenever the game starts, we need to disable the tap text. So here we're going to say tap text dot set active to false. So whenever the game starts, we want to disable the tap text and start the game, and we want to increment the score 1 by 1 by 1, and then we need to keep the game going. So with that done, let's go and save this code, go back to Unity, Okay, so now as you can see here we have our score text, here our game manager, it is waiting for some references. As you can see, first of all we need to give a reference to the tap text. So I'm going to go ahead and drag and drop this tap to start text right here. Then it is asking for a score text. So I'm going to drag and drop the score text right here. So make sure to drag and drop these references correctly, otherwise it's not going to work. So now with that done, let's go and click on play. And as you can see in the beginning, the tap to start is showing, and whenever I click the first time, the tap to start goes and the game starts, and our score gets incremented one by one, and whenever the block falls, our score gets increased. And if I go ahead and collide, automatically the game gets restarted. So our code is working, our game is working, and it is a completely fully functional game that we can see here. So as you can see, our game is working pretty cool, our score is working, our player is working, and everything looks cool. So let's go and test it on the mobile device and see how this is working. So we're going to go to this window, general, and we're going to go to this device simulator. And from here, I'm going to select Google Pixel 5. You can use any other Android or iOS device if you want. And then I'm going to go ahead and click on play and see how this will work in a real mobile device. So I can click on play, and now I can simply drag. And as you can see, when I click, automatically the player moves and I can dodge it. And whenever I collide, automatically the game gets restarted and it starts again. So if I collide, the game gets restarted, and it is asking me to tap to start. If I click, it will start again, simply just like this. So this way our game is pretty much working, as you can currently see. If I go ahead and make it full screen, as you can see, this is how the game is working. So another thing that we want to do is, as you can see, the tap to start is going beyond boundaries. So what you can do is we can simply select this tap to start from the image right here. So you can select the tap to start, and you can, if you want, you can simply make it a little bit smaller. So I'm going to double click here, and I'm going to press the shift key to make it a little bit smaller, just like this. I think this one should look good. Okay, if you want, you can also make it a UI element just like our score text, then it will look even better, but I think this one should look good as well. So let's go and convert it to a score text, UI text. So canvas, UI, image. So this will be our image, and this will be tap text, tap image. Then what you're going to do is, in the tap image, I'm going to go ahead and select the source sprite and select our tap to text image right here. Or you can simply go to the sprites folder and drag and drop the tap to start into this source image of this tap image. Okay, so this is our tap image. Now I'm going to simply click on set native size, and automatically it will become bigger. Now I'm going to disable the tap to start that you have already created before, disable this one. And then I'm going to select this tap image from here, double click to zoom in and make it bigger, just like this. So this way we have used the UI element instead of a random game object just to create the tap text. Okay, just so that it automatically scales to different screen sizes. Now in our game manager, instead of this tap to start, we need to drag and drop this tap image right here. Okay, so now let's go and test it one more time in our simulator. So let's go to Windows General and Device Simulator. Let's select Google Pixel 5. And now let's click on play. And now as you can see, whenever I go, the UI is looking perfect because in this case we have used a UI text instead of a random image. Okay, so this way, as you can see, our game is working, our code is working, and it is looking pretty good, and it is a completely working Android game. Our game is almost done, but here's one more step you can take to make it look even cooler. So you can create a title text right here to make the game look really cool. So I have created a title text and I have put it in my sprites folder just now. So this is the title text that I have created in Photoshop. If you want, you can create it, or you can use any other title text that you want to. So what I can do is, in the canvas, I'm going to go ahead and click on UI and create a new image. Okay, and I'm going to name this one, let's say, title. Okay, now I'm going to select the title and make sure I'm going to reset its position. Now in the source image, I'm going to drag and drop this block dodge image that we have created, and then I'm going to click on set native size. Now it will become bigger. Now what I can do is I can simply go ahead and make it bigger to make it suitable for our game, just like this. Not like this, just like this. So choose a size which is suitable for your game. I think I'm going to choose a size like this, and this looks really cool. So now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna make this title a child of our tap image object. So I'm gonna drag it inside this tap image. So now what will happen is, in our code we are automatically actually disabling this tap image. So whenever this tap image will be disabled, our tap title text will also be disabled along with it. Okay, so now with that done, our game is ready to test again. Now I can go ahead and go to Window, General, Device Simulator. Let's select the Google Pixel 5, and now here we have a block dodge. Now let's see how this one is looking. So let's go and click on play, and this is the block dodge. Whenever I start, as you can see, the title and the tap text both goes away, and whenever the game over happens, automatically they return. So I can start, I can play, I can get score, and I can die, and the game gets restarted. So as you can see, this way the game is really working fine, and it's looking really cool right now. So this way we have created an Android game. So in order to build it, what you can do is you need to go to this file, build settings, and from here make sure you have this scene added. Then you need to go to this player settings. From here give a company name. Let's say I give the name Charger Games. You can give a name to your product. This is the name of the game, Pig Dodge. If you want, you can also give an icon. For now I'm going to give an icon of this pig that we already have here. I'm going to go to the sprites folder. Let's go to the sprites folder and drag and drop the pig image right here. So this is our icon, game icon right now. Now I'm going to come down to this other settings. So now from the other settings, if you want, you can make some changes. As you can see here, we have the version. So every time you create a new version, you need to give a different version here, different version number here. You can select the target architecture, and you can also select the version of the Android. And as you can see, override default package name. This is really essential. You need to give a package name, otherwise you cannot export it. And if you uncheck this, as you can see, automatically Unity will give you a default package name. You can use this one, and if you want, you can also give your own package name just by clicking here. Alright, so as you can see, com.chargergames.pigdodge is our current default package name, so you can either write it or give it like here. Next, as you can see from the resolution and presentation, if you want, you can also change it to windowed or full screen. If you want, you can also disable this auto rotation. So I want to play the game only in the portrait mode. That's why I'm going to disable the auto rotation. So with these things done, now our game is ready to be built. So now I'm going to go ahead and click on build, and here I'm going to create a new folder called Android build. Inside this folder, I'm going to name this file to Pig Dodge. Then I'm going to click on save, and now our APK will be created. So let's click on save. Alright, so after waiting for almost 5 to 6 minutes, finally our APK has been created. As you can see here, we have the Pig Dodge APK. So you can go ahead and put it on your mobile device. You can transfer it to mobile device by USB, by email, by transferring it to Google Drive, and install it, and then you can play it on mobile device. So this way we have created a completely fully working game start to finish in one video. So I hope you really enjoyed and learned a lot of new things in this video. So go ahead and start practicing these things and start working and show this game to your friends and family and enjoy. So thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you really enjoyed building this game with me. So if you want to learn more and build some more cool projects, you can go ahead and check out all my game development courses where you can build runner games, shooting games, racing games, and all these kind of things for Android. You can also check out my C# scripting tutorials to learn about C# and Unity game development. All my course links are given in the description of this video, so you can go ahead and take the courses and build some more cool games really fast. So thank you so much for watching. This is Raja from Charger Games, and I'm going to see you in another video very soon. Till then, keep building and happy coding. Hi everyone, this is Raja from Charger Games, and welcome back to another new video. So in this video, we're going to be learning how to create a cool little Android game within a very short amount of time. So I hope you're really excited. First of all, let's take a look at what you're going to be building at the end of this video. So here I have a simulator open so that I can show you how it looks in a real mobile device. I'm going to click on play. And here I have the play button. I can click on it and the game starts and the player starts running. And here we have our obstacles, and we need to jump to avoid the obstacles. And whenever we collide, our game gets restarted. So we need to jump our player in order to avoid the obstacles, and that's how we can score high. And whenever we collide, the game stops and we can restart. So that's how the game is. It is a completely working game, and I'm going to show you how to build this. So let's get started. Alright, so here I have opened up the Unity Hub. So what you're gonna be doing is you need to make sure you go to this Installs tab. From here you can go to this Install Editor option and make sure to use the latest version or the latest LTS version. This LTS is long-term support and this one is the latest version. So you can go ahead, simply click on Install, and then from here make sure you select this Android build support, Android SDK NDK and OpenJDK, and then you can click on Continue. Also, you need to install this Microsoft Visual Studio if you don't have it installed already. And make sure you install all these three things, only then you will be able to build for Android. So once you have done that, simply click on Continue and it will be installed. So when you have installed Unity and all the required components, we're gonna go to this Projects tab and click on this New Project. Now from here you need to choose either you are going to create a 2D or 3D project. In this case, we're going to create a 3D core. So we're going to select this one, and from the top, make sure to select the latest version of the editor that you're going to be using in this case. All right. Then from here you need to give a name to your project. I'm going to name it Cube Runner, and then I'm going to simply click on Create Project, and it's going to go ahead and create a new project for us. So let's wait for it to create a new project. Alright, so here we have a brand new Unity project opened up. So this is the default layout that you see whenever Unity opens. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to this top right corner, and from the default I'm going to choose this 2x3 layout because that's the layout I prefer for building my games. Alright, so now on the top, as you can see, we have Windows, Mac and Linux written because this is the current platform on which we are working, but we're going to build it for Android. So we're going to go to File, Build Settings, and from here you have to select this Android, and you will have this option only when you install the Android build options from the Unity editor as I've shown you. So now after selecting this Android, simply click on this switch platform and our current platform will be switched to Android. It will take some time, so let's wait for it. So now as you can see, here we have the Unity logo. That means the Android is our current platform, and if we close it, on the top as you can see we have Android written here. That means our build target is currently set to Android. Okay, so now that's done, we're gonna go to our scenes folder, and here we have a sample scene. I'm gonna go ahead and simply rename it to game. Okay, so now the name of our scene is game. Okay, so now with that done, here on the game tab, as you can see here we have free aspect written. I'm gonna click on it, and from here we're gonna choose this 16:9 or 16:9 portrait resolution because this is what gonna be suitable for our mobile devices. All right, now I'm gonna select the main camera. As you can see in our hierarchy, we have this main camera. I'm gonna select it, and from the options, we're gonna disable the skybox and select solid color. And from the background, you can go ahead and choose a suitable color for your game. I think I'm gonna choose something like this. You can use any other color that you want to. I'm gonna select something like this for now. Later I can change it as well. Alright, so now that we have the camera, on the assets folder, let's create few folders which you're gonna be using. First of all, I'm gonna create a new folder called scripts. Inside this we will have our scripts. We're gonna create another new folder. We're gonna call it, let's say, materials. So these are the materials that you're gonna be using in this case. So from here, we're gonna go to this, go to 3D object and create a cube. All right, so here as you can see we have a cube at the center of our game. Now this blue sign that you're seeing is the z-axis or the z-axis, and the red sign that you can see is our red arrow that you can see is our x-axis. So you can simply press the alt key on your keyboard and then press the left mouse button to rotate your view like this. Okay, so make sure to select a view where the arrow key, the blue arrow key, is at the front because our z-axis should be at the front always. Okay, so now I'm going to select the cube and set the z scale to, let's say, 20. 20 is very small, or let's say make it 200 at once so that we don't have to change it again. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and rename this cube to ground because this is going to be our ground. All right, so now I'm going to go to this materials folder. From assets, I'm going to go to this materials folder, and here I'm going to right click, create a new material. I'm going to name this one mat 1, let's say mat 1, and then I'm going to select it and press Ctrl D to duplicate it a few times so that we can create 3-4 materials that you can use later. For the first material, we're going to go ahead and select this albedo option, and from here I'm going to select this green like color because that's what we're going to give to our project. That's what we're going to give to our ground. So I'm going to drag and drop this material 1 over our ground here or here, anywhere we want. Okay. And now again, I can change the color to any other option that I want. I think I'm going to keep it something like this. All right. So now here we have our ground. I'm going to select the ground, and from the tag, as you can see, currently we have it untagged. So I'm going to select here, go to add tag, click plus, and give it a tag ground, just like this. And then select ground, go here and select the ground tag. So now our ground has a ground tag attached, and we will need it later. Now I'm going to go ahead and create a 3D object, a cube again, and I'm going to name this cube player. Then I'm going to select the material 2. First of all, let's select our player and move it a little bit upwards. I think let's make the Y position 1, and that will make it perfectly sit on top of our ground. Now let's select our material 2 and go to the albedo and select a red-like color, something like this. And now I'm going to drag and drop this one on our player. All right, so this is our player. I can make it a little bit like this if I want to. Okay. So now this way we have our ground and our player both ready. Now we need to set our camera so that it looks cool. Also, when we can select our player, go to the tag, and as you can see, already we have this player tag created, so we can select the player tag so that our player has a player tag attached. All right, so now that's done. We're gonna go here and select our camera and change its position a little bit. So you can scroll or rotate your mouse wheel to zoom in or zoom out this scene view. So I'm gonna scroll down to zoom out, and here the red button is the x-axis, and we're gonna move our camera at the x-axis like this and change the Y rotation of the camera to something like, let's say, 45. Actually negative 45. So this is the kind of view that we actually want. I can also make the X position a little bit too far, something like this, and by selecting this one, we're gonna put it a little bit upwards, somewhere like this. So this way it can be it's gonna be at the view where we actually want it to be. Okay, so something like this should be all right. This one looks like our game is at the correct position. Also, we can select the field of view and we can make the field of view bigger or smaller from here. So I think I'm gonna make it something like this, and then I'm gonna make it something like this. All right, so this view looks cool, and this is looking already like a game. You can keep it like this, keep it like this, whatever you prefer for your game, because it's your own game. So I think I'm gonna keep it somewhere like this. This one looks good. So with that done, we have our player, we have our ground. Let's go ahead and create a simple obstacle. So I'm gonna go ahead and create a 3D object, and you guessed it right, we're gonna create a cube. We're gonna name it obstacle, and let's move it a little bit on this side, and we're gonna make its X scale to, let's say 2, not 2, 10, or let's say 5. I think 5 should be good, and the Y scale to 2 is too good. I think 2 is good, and we can position it about at 0.5. All right, so this one looks good. So this is how our obstacles will be, and this will come slowly towards our player, and our player will have to dodge them. Now let's select the material 3 and select a color suitable for our player, not our player, for our enemy. And I think I'm gonna select something like this and drag and drop it right here. I can even change it like this. Okay, so this is how this looks, and this is how things are. So this looks pretty cool. This is our player, this is our ground, and this is our obstacle. Also select our obstacle, go to untagged, click plus, create a new tag, name it obstacle. The O is capital, remember that. Select our obstacle and select the obstacle tag right here. All right, so this way we have our player, ground, and obstacle ready. So let's move our obstacle a little bit backwards, and first of all, let's create a script and program our player so that I can jump our player by tapping on the screen. So inside the scripts folder, right click and create a new C# script, and we're gonna name this one player controller. Also, you can simply name it player or anything you want to. Now select our player and drag and drop this player controller onto our player. So now this player controller script is attached to our player. Now what we need to do is we also need to add a rigid body component to our player. So we're going to go to add component, physics, and then you're going to add a rigid body to it. So this rigid body is what makes this one interact with physics. If you want to get the built-in functionalities of physics from Unity, we need to add a rigid body component to it. So now as you can see, it already has a gravity, it has a drag and all this stuff. We don't need this, we're going to make it 0. We simply need this gravity and we'll keep it. Now from the constraints, we're going to change the freeze rotation. We don't need to rotate our player at any axis. We only need to make it jump on the y-axis. That's why we're going to keep the y still, and we're going to freeze position at x and freeze position at z. Okay, so now that's done. We're going to double click to open player controller in Visual Studio. So let's double click to open it. Alright, so now our player controller script has opened up in Visual Studio. So first of all, here we'll need a few variables which will decide how our game works. So first of all, here we're going to create a new variable called rigid body and we're going to name it RB. Then we need another variable called public float jump force. So this will decide how much the player can jump. Okay, and another variable here we're going to create is bool can jump. So this will decide whether our player can jump or not. Alright, so with that done, now here we're gonna create a awake function. So we're gonna write void awake, which gets called even before start when we start the game. And inside the awake we're gonna say rb equals get component rigid body. This will get the rigid body that we have attached to our game object and store its reference inside this RB variable. So now whatever we want to do with this rigid body, we want to add gravity, we want to add force, we want to add velocity, we can do it simply by using this RB variable. Alright, so now that we have this, what you're going to be doing is inside this update function, we're going to check if we are tapping or clicking on the screen. So to do that, we're going to say if input dot get mouse button down, and within brackets we're going to write 0. That means whether we are clicking the left mouse button. This 0 means left mouse button, and this one works for touch as well. So you don't need to worry whether you are working on mobile or PC. This one works for both, and this one works greatly on mobile as well. I have tested it multiple times. So if input dot get mouse button down 0, that means whenever we are tapping on our screen or clicking our mouse, then we need to make our player jump. Okay, so in order to make our player jump, what you're going to be doing is we're going to write rb.add force. So we're going to add a simple force, and at which direction we're going to add force? We're going to add the force towards the upwards direction. So that's why we're going to write vector3.up multiplied by jump force. Okay, and then after a comma, we're going to write force mode dot impulse. So this will make the jump force a little more effective, and quickly the player will be jumping higher. Okay, if we don't make it impulse, then we will have to give a lot higher jump force like 300, 400, but with that impulse we can simply make it 10, 20 and the player will jump really high. Okay, so now whenever we click the mouse button, our player should jump up with this jump force. Okay, so now let's go to the editor and check how it's working. Alright, so here we are inside the Unity editor. Here we have our player, here we have our rigid body, and here we have our player controller. So let's make the jump force to about, let's say 20 and see how it's working. So let's click on play. And now if I click on play, you will see our player jumps a lot higher. So let's go ahead and make the value about 10 and see how it's working. And this is how the tail looks like. But as you can see, it seems like the player is floating and the player is not coming to ground quickly. So in order to fix this, what we can do is, as you can see here, we have a gravity defined by Unity. We can go ahead and increase the amount of gravity so that the player falls down faster. To do that, we need to go to Edit, Project Settings, and then you need to go to Physics. And inside Physics, as you can see here, we have the gravity and it is set to -9.81, which is default for Earth or for real world. But in this game, we're gonna go ahead and make it higher. Let's say we're gonna make it about I think minus, let's say make it minus 50. So now we have a gravity of about minus 50. That is a lot higher. So now as you can see, when I click on play, if I press here, as you can see, it jumps really fast. So now we're gonna go ahead and make the jump force a little higher. Let's say make it 15. And now if I click on play, now as you can see, the player can jump and it looks really cool. So let's go ahead and make our obstacle somewhere like this, and let's see if our player can jump on it. Yes, the player can easily jump over it. So I think 15 should be good, or later we can change it to any value that you want to. All right, so now our player is okay, but we have one more problem. If we click again and again and again, you can see our player can jump infinite amount of time, but we don't want it. We want our player to jump only when it is grounded or when it is on our ground. Okay, so we need to find a way so that we can make the player jump only once when it is grounded and not again jump higher. Okay, so for that, we're gonna go ahead and open up our player script one more time. Open up our player controller script, and here we're gonna check. Here we're gonna call a function called void on collision enter. So this function gets called whenever our rigid body or our player collides with any other object. Okay, so in this case, whenever it collides with the ground, we're gonna check if collision.gameObject.tag equals ground. All right, so if it collides with the ground, that means we are currently grounded, and that is the time we're gonna make the can jump to true. So whenever the player lands on the ground, we're gonna say can jump equals true. All right, and then we're gonna create another function which will be void on collision exit, and here we're gonna say if collision.gameObject.tag equals ground. So this function gets called whenever our player exits from the collision. That is, whenever the player will jump, it will exit colliding from the ground, and that is the time we're gonna make the can jump to false. So now what will happen is, whenever the player is on the ground, the can jump will be true. That means the player can jump now. And whenever the player will be in the air, the can jump will be false. That means the player will not be able to jump anymore. Okay, now in order to make this condition work, what you're gonna be doing is, here we're gonna say if we press the mouse button or if we tap on the screen, and we're gonna write 2 ampersand. That means we are joining two conditions and can jump. That means when we are pressing the mouse button or tapping on the screen and we can jump, that is when we want to add the force. So this way we can prevent the player jumping multiple times when it is not grounded. So let's go ahead and test how it's working. So here we are in the editor. Let's click on play. And now as you can see, when I click on play, I can jump only once and we cannot jump multiple times. That's because only when it is grounded, our player will jump, and otherwise it's not gonna jump. So that's what we have done. And in order to make it perform correctly, make sure you have this ground tag attached, and also make sure your player has this rigid body and this collider and all these things. Otherwise these things will not work correctly. So now that we have our player working correctly, we need to make our obstacle move towards the player just like this. Okay, so now we're gonna select our obstacle, and from here, as you can see, we have a collider attached. We're gonna go ahead and check this is trigger option. So when we don't have this is trigger, our collider can collide with the player. But when we have this is trigger option, the collider will detect collisions, but it can still go through the player. Okay, because we have two colliders here, the ground and the obstacle. So we're gonna make the ground collide and the obstacle trigger. Okay, so now here we have the obstacle. We're gonna go to the scripts folder, create a new C# script, and I'm gonna name this one obstacle. And then I'm gonna select my obstacle and drag and drop this obstacle right here, and then double click to open the script in Visual Studio. Okay, so now here, only thing we need to do is we need to simply add a speed. So here we're gonna create a public float speed variable, and inside update we're gonna say transform.translate. That means we are simply moving the object or translating the object. At which direction? We're gonna translate it to vector3.forward direction. The forward direction means the z direction. Okay, and then we need to multiply it with speed, and then again we need to multiply it with time dot delta time to make sure the movement is very smooth and time independent. All right, so now with this code, obstacle will slowly move towards the player, but that will depend on the speed value. Okay, we need to make the speed negative so that the obstacle actually moves towards the player, otherwise it will go towards the z direction. Okay, then we're going to create another function, void on become invisible. So this function gets called automatically whenever our obstacle is invisible to the camera. So whenever it goes out of the screen, we need to simply destroy game object. So whenever our obstacle goes out of the screen, it actually gets destroyed. So that's what we want. Okay, so with that done, now let's go to Unity and check how it's working. So here we have our obstacle, here we have a speed. Let's move the obstacle like this, and let's change the speed value to something like -8 and see how it's working. I think I need to make it a little bit faster. Let's make it -10, and let's prove it somewhere like this. Is it okay? I think this one looks pretty good. Okay, so I think this one looks pretty good, so I think I'm going to keep it -10. And if you make it simply +10, then it will go and move towards this axis, which we don't really want. Okay, so with that done, now our obstacle is ready. Now we're going to reuse this obstacle again and again. For that, we need to make it a prefab. Okay, so prefab is an object which you can reuse again and again with the same properties. We don't need to create it again. Okay, so inside assets, we're going to create a new folder. We're going to name it prefab. And inside the prefab folder, I'm going to drag and drop our obstacle. Now, as you can see, it has become blue. That means it has become a prefab. Okay, so now we have our player and we have our obstacle. Now, what we're going to do is whenever our obstacle touches the player, we want to reload the scene because then the game will be over. Okay, so in order to do that, let's open up our player script one more time. Let's open up our player controller. And here we're going to create another new function. We're going to call it void on trigger enter. Okay, and here as you can see, we have the on trigger enter, and here the collider with which we are colliding is inside this other variable. So inside the other variable, we have all the properties of the collider with which we are colliding. That is our enemy. So here we're going to detect if we are colliding with the enemy or not. So we're going to say if other.gameObject.tag equals our obstacle. All right, so if we are colliding with the obstacle, then we're going to simply go ahead and restart the scene. And in order to restart the scene, first of all, we need to import the scene management namespace of Unity. So on the top, you need to write using Unity engine.scene management. All right, and then here we need to write scene manager dot load scene, and inside this we're going to write the name of the scene, and the name of the scene is game. Exactly, you need to write it with exact capitalization. As you can see here, with G is capital, then the things are small. So whatever you have named your scene, you can simply write it within quotations here, and that's how the scene will be reloaded whenever this on trigger enter calls and whenever it collides with the obstacle. Okay, so now let's go back to Unity. So here we have our player, here we have our obstacle, and let's check if the scene gets reloaded or not. So let's click on play, and whenever the player collides, as you can see, the scene gets reloaded. As you can see, the scene automatically gets reloaded whenever the player collides with it. Now, a lot of times this scene reloading doesn't work. So what you can do is you need to go to this file, build settings, and make sure you add open scenes. Whenever you click on this add open scenes, your scene will automatically be added to the build, and that is when this will work correctly in your case or in every case. So now that we have this obstacle and the player ready, now we need to find a way to spawn the obstacles again and again so that it goes again and again and it comes towards the player, and whenever it collides, our game gets restarted. So for that, we're going to go ahead and create a new game manager, and that will take care of everything. So here we're going to create a new empty game object. We're going to name it game manager, and inside the scripts, we're going to go ahead and create a new C# script. We're going to name it game manager as well. Now I'm going to select the game manager and drag and drop the game manager script on top of it. So here we have our game manager now. Now let's go ahead and open up our game manager. Here we have our game manager script. Here we will need a lot of references. So first of all, here we're going to create a public game object obstacle. So this will be a reference to our obstacle because we need to spawn it again and again. So we need a reference to it. Then we need a public transform spawn point. So this is the point from where our obstacles will start spawning. This is the position from where our obstacles will start spawning. Okay. Then here we need a int score variable. In the beginning it will be 0. So this will be the value of our score. Okay. Now here what you're gonna be doing is here we're gonna create a void game start function, and we also need to make it public. So you need to make it public void game start. This will take care of everything whenever the game starts, like it will start spawning, it will start keeping the score and all that. Now let's see how we can actually start spawning. For that we're going to use something called coroutines, because whenever we are spawning our obstacles, we need to spawn it after some time, after random times. Let's say first obstacle we spawn it after 1 second, the second one will be after 2 seconds, the third one will be after let's say 0.8 seconds or something like that. So that's why we're going to create a coroutine, and for that we need to write IEnumerator, and we're going to name it spawn obstacles. Okay, so inside this IEnumerator, actually we need a pair of parentheses here. So inside this IEnumerator spawn obstacles, what we're going to be doing is we're going to write a while true loop. So this is going to be an infinite loop. So this will run until we don't stop it externally. So inside this, we're gonna simply go ahead and spawn our obstacles at a random amount of delay. Okay, so for that we're gonna first of all create a random wait time for our obstacles to be spawned. So we're gonna write float wait time equals random.range. So we need to create a range between which we're gonna create a random number, and after that random amount of time we're going to spawn our obstacles. So the two random amount of times in our case will be 0.2 and 2. Okay, 0.2, let's write an F here and F here as well. So whenever this code runs, this will generate a random value between 0.2 and 2 seconds, and our game will wait for that amount of time, and after that it will spawn the next obstacle. Okay, so here we're going to write yield return new wait for seconds, and here we're going to write wait time. So our game will stop, or not the game, this thing or this function, this loop will wait for this random amount of time, and after that it will spawn the obstacles. In order to spawn it, we write instantiate. And what are you going to spawn? We're going to spawn our obstacle game object, which we have a reference to here. So here we're going to write instantiate obstacle. Then we have to write the position where we want to spawn it. And here we already have a transform component where we want to spawn it. So we're going to write spawn point dot position. And then it will write the rotation which we want to give to our game object, but we don't want any external rotation. We just need to simply give it at the same default rotation. For that, you're going to write quaternion dot identity. That means no rotation at all. All right, so now whenever this loop runs, whenever this coroutine runs, automatically a random number will be generated, and it will wait for a random amount of time, and after that it will spawn the next obstacle, and that's how random obstacles will be spawned. So now inside the game start, we're gonna start this coroutine. For that we're gonna write start coroutine, and inside this, within double quotations, we need to write the name exactly same. So let's go ahead and copy it so that we don't make any mistakes. Let's copy it and paste it right here. So now whenever the game start function gets called, automatically these spawn obstacles will be called as well. Okay, now inside our start, for now we're gonna simply call our game start function because we don't have another way to do it for now. So we're gonna simply call it inside our start function. Okay, So now whenever the game starts, our game start function will be called. It will call the coroutine, and the coroutine will be started, and our obstacles should spawn. So let's go ahead and check how it's working in Unity. Alright, so here we have our game manager, and as you can see, it is asking for an obstacle. So we're gonna go to our prefab folder, and from inside prefab folder, we're gonna drag and drop our obstacle. And make sure to drag it inside the prefab folder, from inside the prefab folder, and not from the scene, because this one will be deleted after some time and this is not gonna work. So we're gonna disable this obstacle from now because we don't need it right now. We're gonna go ahead and create a new empty game object, and we're gonna name this one spawn point. And I think we're gonna position it a little bit away from the player, because this is the position from where we actually want to start our obstacles to spawn. Let's make the Y position to 0.5 because that is the default Y position of our obstacles as well. So we're gonna make the spawn points Y position to 0.5, and the Z position should be about, let's say 20, something like this should be okay. We can change it later as well. Now let's select our game manager and drag and drop our spawn point directly here. So now our game manager has access to the obstacle. Also, it has access to the spawn point. So now let's click on play and see if it is working or not. So now as you can see, automatically our obstacles start spawning after random amount of time, and that's how they are coming towards our player, and the player has to jump between them, and that's how things are. So now as you can see, the game is working. The player can move and the obstacles come automatically, but there are some problems. So what you can do is we can simply go ahead and adjust the jump force of the player and make it a little bit higher. Let's make it 18. And also, as you can see, our obstacles are coming too fast. So we're gonna go to our obstacle script, and we're gonna make the random value, not the obstacle script, the game manager script. We're gonna make the random value. Okay, so here we have written 0.2. We did write 0.5, which should be the minimum number. Okay, so 0.5 and 2 should be good in our case, and that thing should work right. We can also adjust the player speed according to our own wish to make sure it's working correctly. So with that done, now let's go back to Unity. So now we need to create a score mechanism, and also we need to create a button so that whenever we click it, our game starts. So for that, we need to create a canvas. So we're going to click here, go to UI, and create a new canvas. And as you can see, automatically a new canvas will be created, inside which we will have all our UI elements. So from the canvas, we're going to change the UI scale mode to scale with screen size. That means our UI elements will be automatically changing towards the screen wherever we put the game. So let's say we put it in a smaller screen, the UI elements will be smaller. When we put it in a larger game, the UI elements will be automatically scale according to our screen size. Okay, and for the reference resolution, let's give it 1920 by 1080, which should be all right. And let's set the match to 0.5. Okay, so with that done, now we have our canvas ready. Let's right click, go to UI, and create a new UI text mesh pro text. And for that, we're going to import the TMP essentials. Let's click on that. And now we have the essentials imported, and here we have a text as well. Now as you can see here, it's hard to edit the text in this view. So we're going to go to this 2D mode so that we can easily edit this UI, and we can double click on this text so that it can focus on the text wherever that is. So as you can see, currently we have the text right here. We're going to go ahead and rename it to score text. So let's make it score text. Okay. And for this text, text content, we're gonna make it to 0 because it will be a number which will keep increasing according to our game. Now, make sure you select this rect selection tool or rect tool, and then drag the corners to make it larger, because otherwise we cannot make it bigger, because we need to make it bigger. And then we're gonna position it somewhere like this, and change the font size to higher, just like this. As you can see, currently the font size is 40. We can go ahead and make it about, let's say, something like 200. And I think make it a little more bigger, 300. 300 should be okay. And now we need to keep it at the center of our screen. And then we need to put this one at the center as well. So for that, from these options, from these alignment options, we're gonna choose center vertically and center horizontally as well. and then we're gonna make it a little bit smaller, something like this, and then you can simply put it somewhere like this. Now I'm gonna select the color and change the alpha value somewhere like this. So this one looks a little more professional than how it is. So now from here the score will go to 1, 10, 100, 1000, 10,000 and all that, and we will not have any problems. Okay, so here our score text will be shown. So along with the score text, we will also need to create a new button by clicking which we can actually start the game. So you're going to select the canvas, create an UI. We're going to click on this button Text Mesh Pro. So here we have a new button and we're going to name this one to, let's say, play button. Okay. So now here we have the play button. We can double click to actually zoom in it. Here we have the play button. Now here we can simply go ahead and use this button as it is, and we can simply go ahead and change the play text to play. Let's say we write play here, and whenever the game starts we can start playing. But we can also decorate it a little bit to make it a little more cooler than how it is. So for that we're gonna go ahead and delete the text because we don't need it. Select the play button, and as you can see here we have a UI sprite image. You can go ahead and download any other button image that you want, or you can create your own using Photoshop or any other photo editor and then use that button image as the UI sprite right here. So I have downloaded a button image from flaticon.com and I'm going to use that. So inside the assets, I'm going to import that one. So here I have imported the button image, and as you can see it has been imported as a default. So I'm going to choose the texture type and change it to Sprite 2D and UI. Make sure you have this Sprite 2D and UI selected and then click on apply. Only then you will be able to use this as your UI image. Now we're going to select our button, this play button, go to this UI sprite and drag and drop this play button right here. So now as you can see we have the play button here. Now as you can see it is a little bit distorted, so you can simply drag it to change it, or you can simply click on this set native size to set it to the correct size. Then you can go ahead and make it smaller or bigger according to your own wish. I think I want to make it a little smaller, something like this, and position it somewhere like this. Now whenever this button is pressed, I want the game to start, and we have everything inside the game start function, so which will decide what to do when the game starts. So now we need to select our play button, and here we need to add an on click event to detect clicks on that button. So I'm going to click on plus, and now here it is asking for an object where we have the functions which we want to call. So we have the functions inside this game manager script. So you're going to drag and drop this game manager right here. And now from the functions, we're going to go to game manager and use this game start function. Okay. So now whenever we press this button, automatically this game start function will be called. And make sure you have made this game start a public function, because otherwise it's not going to work. So make sure to make it a public, only then this is going to work. Okay. So now that's done. We have this score text set, and we have this play button set. So now all we need to do is whenever the game starts, we need to keep updating the score, and also we need to start the game whenever the play button is pressed. So let's go ahead and do that inside our game manager. Alright, so here we are inside the game manager. Here we need a few references. Here first of all we need a reference to the text score object. For that, we also need to import our UI elements. As you can see here, we are using the UI from the Text Mesh Pro module. You can also use the Unity's default text. In that case, you need to simply write using unityengine.ui. But in this case, I need to write using TM Pro because we are using the Text Mesh Pro text and buttons. Now here we need to write a reference to the Text Mesh Pro button. So you're going to write public Text Mesh Pro UGUI, and then it writes score text. So inside this, we will have a reference to our score text that we have created, and then we can actually use it to do whatever we want to. Then we will need another reference to our play button that we have created. So for that, here we're going to write public game object, and we're going to write play button. Okay. So now we don't need to start the game from the game start. So we're going to go ahead and delete this because we are already calling the game start function whenever we are pressing our play button. Okay. So inside the game start function, we need to start spawning the obstacles. Also, we need to actually activate the player whenever the game starts, because if the player is on the screen from the beginning, it will not look good. So we will deactivate the player in the beginning, and then we will activate it whenever the game starts. So here we will also need a reference to the player. So we're going to write public game object player, and here we're going to write player dot set active to true. So whenever the game starts, we want to set the player to activated, and we also want to make the play button dot set active to false. Okay, so whenever the game starts, we want to activate the player and deactivate the play button, because when the game starts, we don't want the play button to be on the screen. That will look really weird. Also, we need to update the score, but we haven't created anything that can update the score yet. So what we can do is, here we can create a new function. We're going to call it void score up. This function will simply go and do score plus plus. So whenever this function is called, the score will be incremented by 1. And then we also need to update the score text on the screen to update this score value. For that, here we're going to write score text dot text equals score. Now this is an integer and this is a string, so this is not going to work. So we need to convert this integer to a string. So we can write dot to string. So now whenever our score value is, let's say it is 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever the value is, that value will be automatically shown on the score text on our screen. Okay, now we need to simply call this score up function after a certain amount of times repeatedly, so that our score gets incremented again and again. For that, here we're gonna create invoke repeating function. So this invoke repeating can call any function repeatedly. Inside that, within double quotations, we're gonna write score up. So now the score up function will be called again and again. After how many times? We need to write that here. So we need to start it after 2 seconds, and then after every 1 second, the score will be incremented. Okay, so here we are saying is, we need to call this score up function after 2 seconds, and then every 1 second call it again and again and again and again. So that way our score will be keep incrementing, and our score text will also keep incrementing. Now here I have made a mistake. As you can see, the P is capital, but here the P is small. This is very important. Once that happens, this is not gonna work. So make sure to copy this one from here and paste it exactly same as it is written here. Otherwise, this is not gonna work. So now we have all things set. We have the score up. We are activating the player, deactivating the play button whenever the game starts. We are calling the score, and everything should work. So now that we have done this, let's go and save and see if it is working on Unity or not. So now that we have done it, inside our game manager, we will need to add a lot of new references. So for the score text, let's drag and drop our score text right here. For play button, let's drag and drop our play button right here. For player, let's drag and drop our player right here. Now in the beginning, we need to select our player and deactivate it. And whenever the game starts, we need to activate it, and let's see if that is working. So let's click on play. So here we have a button. If we click it, as you can see, our player is here and our game starts, our obstacles come, and our score also keeps going up again and again. So our game is pretty much working, and if I collide, automatically the game gets restarted. If I click over here again, the game gets started again. So everything looks exactly as we want it to. So things are working pretty fine. If you want, you can also make it a little bit faster or slower and make the players jump a little bit higher to actually customize the game according to your own wish. You can also go ahead and add a title right here so that it is shown whenever the game starts, but I think I'm going to keep it right there. So now that our game is like this, and let's go ahead and check how it's working on a little real device. So I'm going to go to this general device simulator. From here, I'm going to select this Google Pixel 5. So now I'm going to click on play. And if I click on here, as you can see, this is how it's going to look in a real device. So this is how the scores will be. This is how the player will be. And whenever it collides, automatically the game gets restarted. Alright, so our game is ready. So now all we need to do is we need to actually build it for Android and install it in our device. So for that, I'm going to go to File, Build Settings, and make sure our current platform is set to Android. And once that's done, I'm going to go to this player settings tab. And here, as you can see here, we have a company name. I'm going to give my company name, but you can go ahead and give your company name or keep it default. Let's name it CubeRunner here, and let's keep the name same. You can give an icon to your game. Now from the resolution, as you can see, here we have the default orientation set to auto rotation, but since it's a portrait, we're going to set it to portrait so that our game always stays in the portrait and not goes to landscape. Now from the other settings, as you can see, here we have the package name. If you want, you can simply go ahead and change the package name. This will be unique for your game. So you can go ahead and change it or keep it same. And when you create an updated version of your game, you need to actually increment the version and the bundle version code. Okay. So with that done, now we can go ahead and click on build. And then here I'm going to create a new folder called builds. And inside the builds folder, I'm going to save it with the name Cube Runner Game, and then click on save, and it will be actually exported as an APK file which you can install in your device. Alright, so after waiting for some time, finally our APK file has been generated, and here it is. You can go ahead and transfer it to your mobile device either via USB, or you can simply email it to your device or transfer it somehow, and then you can install it to your mobile device and then you can play it. Also, you can share this APK to your friends and family and let them enjoy your game. Alright, so thanks a lot for watching this video. I hope you really enjoyed the whole process of making a complete game in this very short time. And if you want to make some more cool games like 3D Endless Runners, 2D Endless Runners, 2D Catching Game, 2D Runner Game, Racing Game and all that, I have a lot of different courses where you can learn to build all these games from these courses for your mobile devices, for your PC and all that. You can get all my courses from the links in the description of this video and from the pinned comments. So go ahead and enroll in the courses and learn how to build some more cool games. So thanks for watching. This is Raja from Charger Games, and I'm going to see you in another video very soon. If you like this video, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe to this channel for more cool tutorials. And I'm going to see you in another video very soon.